Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's Tuesday Talk episode is all about music, all things music today. Y'all know that I have different things that I love, in my life, but one thing for sure is music. And I am so music minded that someone could literally ask me how my day is going, and I'm literally tempted to give them a song from my playlist to describe how my day was. That's how musically inclined I am. So when it comes to music, many of the questions that I get, or the top 3 questions that I get, I should say, is one, how has music changed your life? Number 2, why do you have such a strong obsession and connection with music? And number 3 is there a day that you don't listen to music? And so I'm going to be answering all 3 today. So R&B, country, and the other genres that I love, besides gospel, are like when I'm, in a fun mood or in a fun vibe, And it is not a sin to have fun and be a Christian, especially if you're mature enough to know where to set the boundaries. Because, you know, there's a lot of Christians who listen to secular music with profanity in it. And then that is the result sometimes of, sometimes what you're listening to is a result of what you say, and of course that's profanity. So, as long as you know where to set the boundaries, then you're good. I don't listen to music that has profanity in it as far as secular music goes. And any secular music that I listen to, it doesn't go against my beliefs. So yeah. And of course, as far as gospel and Christian music, worship will always be a lifestyle for me. We have, as worshipers, as people of God, we are mandated to worship God in spirit and in truth, and to do it faithfully and continuously. So now we are going to get into the first question: how has music changed my life? Okay, so let's talk gospel for a minute though. Gospel, like I said, is the most prominent genre for me, and it's solely based off of my experiences in life, because when you go through certain things in life as a Christian, certain songs that you listen to catch your attention and your heart in a completely different way. Like, I love other genres, but like the one genre I'll never be able to get rid of is gospel, simply because of that. It speaks to the heart of what people experience, and it also communicates in so many different ways our heart to God and what we feel that can only be expressed through a certain sentiment of lyrics, if that makes sense. And I absolutely love that in hard seasons, I may not always have the adequate words to say as far as a prayer to God, when I'm in seasons where I'm upset or heartbroken or unsure or just completely speechless. But I have a playlist of songs that really, speak to me as far as how to process, how to accept, whatever situation happens and how to move forward from that. I have such a wide range in gospel music, as far as the playlist is concerned. Um, you know, it's a long list. Number 2, why do I have such an obsessive connection to music? I grew up, using anything as a microphone when I was a toddler. So I literally sang my head off when I was a kid. I grew up watching live recordings, acting like a background vocalist to some of the best gospel albums that there are now. My dad, being a gospel artist himself, he would buy DVDs to almost every live recording that came out, on a DVD. To name a few: Kierra Sheard Kelly, William Murphy, Marvin Sapp, Karen Clark Sheard, Dorinda Clark Cole, Fred Hammond, and so many more people that released DVDs for their live recordings. So that's what started the whole exposure to gospel music, is from a kid, like kid. So if you play something that's within my time range of my ideal playlist based on what I was exposed to and who I know, based on the music or the first line of the song, I can catch who it is by that alone. Now, although I am a 2000s kid, I love going back to especially the good older gospel music, because I do love Milton Brunson. I love the Clark sisters and the mass choirs, back in the days. So it's a great mix between old and new and gospel. So it's not just new what we listen to now. I grew up musically inclined, as you guys know, and that comes from not just my dad presenting music to me very young, but he's also a minister of music. So a lot of these church songs, are songs that would be rehearsed for praise and worship. And with being a PK and all of that, and being in the settings of being, in a church environment, I was at choir practice or worship team rehearsal or band practice. So I literally just learned by church and by music, in the gospel industry. Like, that's how I caught on to music extremely well. And my dad, he does have an experience as a worship pastor and a music director as well. But I learned more about worship from my favorite worship leader. Same as being a PK. My father, he was also a PK, but I had no clue what to expect as a PK. So without saying too much, I'm just going to say, it's like investing in everything and everybody else except for your own people, if I could say it nicely. But it is definitely a journey I had to figure out by myself. And I will say that even though my father has, knows a lot about music, a lot of the parts about music that I learned was from me just exposing myself to, other gospel artists. And that's why, like, a lot of the things when I talk about church sometimes have nothing to do with my parents, because there's a lot of people besides them that I've learned stuff from, especially in church and music and worship and all that stuff. And I would not trade it for anything, honestly, because there's so many people in the music industry, especially gospel, who I call aunties and uncles because of their impact on my life through their music, that I know that no one else at this point could give me in my lifetime. Like, for example, I learned, and I'm still learning, of course, because she's still my biggest inspiration ever. I learned worship and how to drive songs from Mignon Sarton, who is my favorite worship leader, who feels like a legit auntie to me. I literally started listening to her when I was 4. That's when I first heard her voice, and then from that point on, I've just been listening to her sing her head off. She's such a vocal beast. So I learned that from her. I learned a little bit of worship from Psalmist Rain, but mostly Mignon. I learned quartet from many groups, but the staple for me is the Bolton Brothers when I was younger. And Mignon is the niece and daughter of the Bolton Brothers. I love all the Bolton Brothers, but Mignon's dad feels like another adopted grandfather to me. Oh my goodness, he can preach, he can sing, he's absolutely the sweetest. I learned hooping from Pastor E. Dewey Smith as a young kid as well. And I also learned hooping as well from my uncle, who is our assistant pastor at church. Literally everyone that I've listened to, as far as music in general, I've learned vocal runs from everyone across the board. How do I describe music? I describe music as just another language that we use to communicate vocally and lyrically. It's another way of communicating our heart and our perspective on whatever we want to talk about or what message we want to get across that sometimes our regular speech is incapable of doing. And music is a big part of what I do in ministry, as you guys know. And I'll even make that to an example of how music and ministry have went together for me. Okay, so let's flash back to New Year's Eve 2021, before 2022 started. I was singing a part that I had remixed based off one of my favorite worship songs called All I Want by James Fortune, featuring my favorite worship leader, Mignon Sarton. And I was singing that part during New Year's when we had spontaneous worship. So the intercession team could pray prayer, praying, God, we want more and all this stuff. And, we want favor, we want this, we want that. And I was singing in the refrain, all I want is more, So for me, playing music, singing, that is my way of worship to God. So basically, like I said, music to me is just speech, but lyrically, it's like prayer. You know, for me, worship is like prayer, but in song form, because music is like my form of worship to God. Okay, now I know I've talked my head off about gospel, and I will towards the end of this Tuesday Talk episode, but let's talk about secular music for a minute. So let me give an example about that. So I watch a little bit of The Terrell Show on YouTube, especially if some of my favorite artists and singers are making an appearance on there for an episode. But he has a album called An Invitation to the Cookout. There's a studio version and a live version of this album, the exact same songs. But I love the live version of Untouchable with Brooke Simpson and Lexi Cole because, oh my goodness, they absolutely crushed it. But there's a line in the lyrics that speaks to me so much, and it's I keep falling for the ones who don't ever reciprocate it. And it's more like a breakup song when you listen to it, but it's something different for me because I mean, I'm not in a relationship, but for me it's like, so it's, how do I put it? I don't fall for the wrong friends. It's more of a trust with family, if that makes sense. Like an emotional trust. It's like things could go good and, you know, certain situations ease up a little bit and, you know, everyone's a little bit cool around each other. But when there's a boundary crossed or, you know, things get a little heated, it's like I shouldn't have gotten that close that fast so that I could have avoided getting hurt again for things that aren't my fault. But it still hurts because I'm not being reciprocated what I give, you know, love, support, time, all that stuff. So that's a little bit of an example for me as to how I have an emotional connection in music, you know, that really sets me off like crazy. Number 3, last question. Is there a day that you don't listen to music? Yes. I know as musically inclined as I seem and sound, there are days where I literally can go a whole day without music, and I know that sounds absolutely crazy. I have like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks where I can listen to music every single day, and then I'll have like a day or a couple few hours where I really don't want to listen to music, and then I'll jump over that little hump and then I'll blast music the next day or, you know, the rest of the day. So it just depends on the vibe or what's going on in my life. But some days I will sit in room in silence and just be on my phone, you know, chilling, and yeah. But music is usually an everyday occurrence for me. So yeah, music is everything for me. It's not just lyrics and instruments with it. It's a vibe, it's an emotion, it's a feeling, it's a story, and it helps us to process whatever we experienced. And that's how music has changed my life and why I am so obsessed with music. Now, I know this conversation has been pretty much music minded. People always want to know who my top artists are as far as female, male, choir, worship leaders, all that stuff. So please note also that these people aren't in any specific order on some of these lists. I'll definitely tell you who my top are, you know, and the people under that. And, you know, I have too many people, so this is just what I can think of right now. So let's start with worship leaders. Of course, y'all know my up here, top tier, my favorite worship leader ever is Mignon Bolton Sarton, period. I mean, y'all already knew that. I talk about her like almost every single time I get on here. Then under her is Jasmine Walton, Greg Kirkland, Morris Flowers, Corey Butts, Darius Polk, and those names that I just mentioned, they are all worship leaders at House of Hope Atlanta. So of course they're going to be on the list for worship leaders because I love watching House of Hope. And then other favorite worship leaders of mine, Psalmist Rain and Mattia Washington. As far as female vocalists, of course y'all know who the first person is. Mignon Bolton Sarton, period. Kiera Sheard Kelly, Tasha Cobbs Leonard, Jasmine Walton, Susan Carroll, Miranda Curtis, Janae Jones, Shaniqua Smith. Janae and Shaniqua are singers and worship leaders at Spirit and Truth, aka YLC in Atlanta. The Clark sisters, Christina Bell, Shalea, Zael when they were a group, Virtue, Trinity 5-7, all of those, female groups. Church Kids, if I am missing female vocalist or anybody in any list that I have for vocalists, please put them down below. Okay, now the male vocalist is long. Okay, so let's go through this. Lawrence Flowers, Zacardi Cortez, Edie Smith, Greg Kirkland, Darius Polk, Daryl Walls, oh my goodness, Marvin Sapp, Jay Moss, Isaac Caree, Tone, Melvin Crispell III, Fred Hammond, Men of Standard, Dawkins and Dawkins, Commission, United Tenors, the group Fire, Cardell Booker, Men of Standard, Jarrell Smalls, John P. Key. So that's for the male vocalist. Now, as far as my favorite choirs, Kevin Lemons and Higher Calling, oh goodness, they set it off every time they sing. Ricky Dillard and New G, Jason Claiborne and the Atmosphere Changers, James Pickney and the Sounds of Holiness, Charles Butler and Trinity. Then there's Vincent Bohannon with Sounds of Victory. So those are my choirs, okay? Other singing groups, the Walls Group, Shelby 5, Pentatonics, Maverick City Music. So there's just a whole bunch. Now, music isn't just vocals all the time. It's also instruments and sounds that we create with instruments and, sound effects to create a mood of what we want to express in our music. And so I wanted to not only just shout out, vocalists as well, but shout out, people that play, instruments and all that sorts of things. So as far as pianists go, Christian Brown, also known as CJ, is one of my favorites. Matt K. Simmons, who is the music director for Spirit and Truth YLC in Atlanta. Antoine Walker, Billy Barlow, they both are pianists for House of Hope Atlanta. And then, of course, my father is one of my favorite pianists as well. As far as organist, organ players, Josh Orr, who is an organist for Spirit and Truth YLC. Jaden Arnold, who plays for House of Hope Atlanta. Of course, I have to make sure that this one gets on the list because, oh my goodness, unmatched. Twinkie Clark, like, come on, y'all. And then Christian Bishop, he is the organist for Bishop Brandon Jacobs, who is a very famous preacher. Let's get to these guitarists, y'all. Okay, so Jubu Smith, Rick Watford, Justin Raines, John Webb, all four of those that I just mentioned, they play guitar for House of Hope Atlanta and also other various artists, and they are incredibly amazing at what they do. Trey Radford, he is a guitarist, I think bass, for Spirit and Truth YLC. And then Jon Snow on TikTok that I found, he is absolutely incredible. He plays phenomenally. So yeah, those are my favorite guitarists. So there y'all go. That's how music has changed my life and who in the music industry has changed my life. I hope that y'all, all my music lovers, enjoyed this video. Be sure to share, like, subscribe, and comment below some of your favorites. And follow me on all of my social media pages, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and I will see you guys later.